This episode is sponsored by NordVPN, the best and safest way to protect your online private data. Sign up to NordVPN now and get an exclusive discount by going to nordvpn.com/evolutionofhorror. That's nordvpn.com/evolutionofhorror. In 1931, Paramount produced one of the boldest and most transgressive horrors of the 1930s with their pre-code film, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Nearly 30 years later, in 1960, Hammer attempted their own bold, transgressive adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's novel with The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, which contained explicit sexual imagery for the time, much of which was cut and censored.
If you cannot bear to see a man change before your eyes, then shut them for just a few seconds, if you can.
A decade on, when censorship had relaxed and Hammer had moved into more titillating and exploitational movies, they adapted the story again, but with a twist. Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde dabbled in themes of gender fluidity and sexuality, whilst also throwing in plenty of explicit nudity and, with its Jack the Ripper B-plot, plenty of blood-drenched violence.
Male. Male. Male.
Join me as we continue exploring the evolution of man-made monsters, and we discuss two Hammer adaptations of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Welcome back to the Evolution of Horror. My name is Mike Muncer, and as ever, I am your host. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the history and the evolution of the horror genre, one subgenre at a time. We are currently in the midst of our 11th season, exploring the evolution of man-made monsters, and this is part 11. In this week's episode, as that intro suggested, we are going to be looking at two more adaptations of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, this time from the Hammer era. So that's The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll from 1960 and Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde from 1971. Both films are, I think, a hell of a lot of fun. Both are worth a watch before you listen to our discussion. So I sat down with a friend of the pod, professor and lecturer, and one of my old lecturers, in fact, and Hammer superfan, Graham Saunders, to discuss both these films in depth. Enjoy. A big welcome back to Graham Saunders. Hello, Graham.
Hello, Michael.
Hello. Welcome to I've brought you to a studio today, and you did mention it. It's a bit like I've drawn you into a serial killer lair, doesn't it?
Yes. Lots of lots of wooden doors and soundproof,
Yes,
and
exactly.
doors that lead downstairs. Yes.
It's quite fitting, I think,
Yes.
isn't it? You know, I like it. I like to set a vibe. So we've been talking about this series. We've been talking about the kind of the horrors of science, I suppose, in comparison to last year's The Horror of Nature. What are your thoughts of on this subgenre, Graham? Are you a fan of these kind of mad science type horror movies?
Yeah, I am, and and like you say, it's science. This is the series, I guess, which crosses over into science fiction much more than many of your others, such as Home Invasion.
Yes.
So that's purely horror.
Mm-hmm.
Here we've got something like a film like Metropolis.
Yeah.
is also a mad scientist film, but it's also a piece of sort of iconic science fiction.
Yeah, and science fiction and horror have always gone quite well hand in hand, haven't they?
Yes,
I think.
and
Yeah.
definitely here, because you've got fears about technology, but you've also got, as with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the scientist experimenting upon himself.
Yes.
And
yes.
what that unleashes. Or in a film like Ken Russell's Inner States, that strange film where...
Oh, Altered States.
Altered States,
Yes. Absolutely, yeah.
So again, it's sort of exploring it's the scientist actually finding it's William Hurt in a flotation tank.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And of course, we've done a lot of Frankenstein adaptations this series, the Universal ones, the Hammer ones. What are your We've got a new Frankenstein movie coming out later this year, of course. Are you a fan of the kind of the Frankenstein story?
Very much so.
Yeah.
And also sort of some of the classic Universal horrors. And of course, the Hammer Frankenstein series. And it was interesting what Kevin Lyons had to say about that. Incidentally, the two he didn't like.
Yes.
Those who were trying to work there, it's Evil of Frankenstein and Horror of Frankenstein. I'm pretty sure that's the two he felt were duds.
That's right.
And I would agree with him.
Right. Yeah. I think you've mentioned in the past you're not the biggest fan of the Hammer Frankenstein films.
No,
right?
Curse of Frankenstein I think is great. We've got the new DVD coming out, and in fact, in Birmingham, they're screening Curse of Frankenstein. I think Curse of Frankenstein is one of the best ever Hammer films.
Yeah.
Revenge of Frankenstein, I think, is also really good.
Yeah.
I think it then goes off the boil until, well, Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, which you're going to be talking about.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And then, as Kevin Lyons pointed out, I've got a lot of affection for the last in the series, Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell.
Yes.
Because it's also got a sort of melancholic end. It's also the end of an era for Hammer as well. 73 really marks Cushing's last film almost Cushing's last film for Hammer.
Yeah.
And Hammer itself, folds up in 77.
Absolutely. So I think it's been really interesting how many movies there are in the Universal era and in the Hammer era that are about the mad scientist, the mad doctor, that kind of thing.
And also Hammer is always, and has been pointed out, in the Universal. It was always about the monster.
Right, yes.
Whether it's played by Karloff or Glenn Strange, Hammer, it's always about Cushing.
Yes.
And his obsession.
Does technology scare you, Graham? Are you a very techie person?
Well, I've had to be. I sort of span that era of the analog and the advent of the computer. I couldn't do my job without technology now. No. So when we had lockdown, suddenly we all discovered Zoom. So we were having student seminars via Zoom. But at the same time, I'm someone who always prints out my theatre ticket and my airline ticket. Yes,
you like things on paper.
I still like things on paper. So I trust technology. I have to use technology, and I've got used to it. So when you were at university, Mike, I marked your essays by hand.
That's right.
Now everything is done. Now everything is done online.
Yeah.
So all my comments are now typed.
Yeah.
And without that technology, we wouldn't be able to function. So the old days of actually sort of doing things by paper. So technology is both a great advantage, but also, as you say, when things go wrong.
Yeah.
When I went to Marks and Spencer's and I couldn't use the credit card when they had that bug. Or up in Birmingham at the moment, Jaguar Land Rover.
Yeah.
Everything has ceased. Or when they had that outage in Barcelona.
Yeah.
So suddenly, so I'm still someone who carries cash.
Oh, that's good.
Still carry cash. So technology, and also, of course, one of the things we're having to sort of deal with in the university sector is AI.
Of course. I was just going to say, is that a problem with student writing their essays?
Not yet. I can tell, although we always get several plagiarism cases where students have used AI, and at the moment it's very obvious to see.
Right, okay, yeah.
But it's going to get harder. So we're going to have to change the way we assess work. So the old methods of having essays, it's probably going to be things like vivas.
Right.
So we're going to, or bringing back, unfortunately, formal exams where people are sitting in an exam hall.
Yeah.
Because AI is going to get more and more sophisticated. At the moment, what AI does with essays is that it trawls the internet.
That's right. Takes things from elsewhere, doesn't it?
So it can't quite link things up in the way that we as human beings can.
Right.
And so at the moment, it's quite easy to detect an AI essay. Yeah. But I think it's going to get harder.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to in the university sector, we're going to have to change our assessment, the way we assess work.
Well, this is it. And actually, it's interesting how many horror movies and science fiction movies were warning about the dangers of AI from as early as Metropolis in a way, right? But then I think particularly very soon after this week, we're going to get to 2001, A Space Odyssey with HAL, and then we're going to get to the Stepford Wives and Demon Seed and a lot of kind of killer robots and all of that kind of thing. So we're really like entering the 60s into the 70s really felt like the age of, you know, a kind of a real fear of that, of the machine, you know.
Or in Blade Runner, where you've actually got someone whose job it is to detect.
That's right.
Someone who is human and someone who is...
Yes. That's something we're all going to have to do from now on, Graham. We need to get some Blade Runners. Yeah, exactly. So this week we're talking about Jekyll and Hyde. I find this a really fascinating... I've really enjoyed discussing this particular text because it feels just a little bit darker than so much of the other stuff we've been looking at, you know. Are you a fan generally of the obviously this is based on Robert Louis Stevenson's kind of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1886. Are you a fan generally of this story and its adaptations?
I am. I mean, I love the novella.
Yeah.
I mean, if you compare Stevenson's work for children in inverted commas, Treasure Island and Kidnapped.
Wow, yeah.
You've then got also the Gothic. We forget it's not just Dr. Jekyll and Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He also wrote short stories like The Body Snatcher,
right,
which are also fantastic Gothic tales. So, and then of course there's also his travelogues, his work on the South Sea Islands. Right. So he was an incredible polymath. Yeah, working in all sorts of different styles. But the novella is interesting because it's a mystery.
Yeah.
It's worked, and the films are very different.
Yes.
It doesn't work so much on the discovering who Mr. Hyde is. We know immediately who he's going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a huge commercial success as a novella, and it's interesting in cinema history, right from the Silent Barrymore version.
Yeah,
it's always been a surefire hit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder why that is. It's something about this story that lends itself to adaptations over and over again, doesn't it?
Well, everything. And I'm going to mention your other podcast.
Yes.
on the Carry-Ons. Jekyll and Hyde turns up in Carry On Screaming.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
And Jerry Lewis doing The Nutty Professor.
Yes.
3 years after the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
So it can be both used for a vehicle for comedy and also for horror.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess it's something about that idea of all of us have that other side to us, I suppose, right? The hidden dark side, or the id, or whatever it might be. Yeah, and so I think that's it. And I think because of that, I mean, a couple of weeks ago we talked about the Paramount 1931 version with Frederick March, which I think is incredible, actually, and really quite bold and transgressive for its time, right?
Well, Miriam Hopkins' swinging leg and the
stockings,
where she throws the garter at the camera.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I still think, I mean, we're talking about two Hammer adaptations, but I still think the Ruben Mamillin version, I think it's still the best.
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely. But I quite like that these two versions we're about to talk about. They're not a complete rehash story-wise. They are both doing something a little bit different to what we've seen previously.
They very much take the novella and they change it quite radically.
Yes.
If you cannot bear to see a man change before your eyes, then shut them for just a few seconds, if you can, and listen for the shuddering sounds to end. They mark the evil transformation of Henry Jekyll to his monstrous other self, the cruel, depraved Edward Hyde.
For God's sake, man, don't kill him. Let me alone, Jekyll. Let me alone, Jekyll.
So let's talk about The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll from 1960. Graham, we won't go into the plot for this because it is essentially just the same plot again. You know, there are some key differences which we'll talk about as we go. But what do you think of this? Hammer's first attempt at... well, actually, maybe we should start there. This actually isn't their first go at adapting Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? Because they had actually done one previously.
They did. The year before, they did a comic version with Bernard Bresslaw, someone who you are going to be talking about, I suspect, a lot in the Carry On podcast.
Yes.
He literally does loom large.
He really does. He really does. In fact, the interesting fact, right, you probably know, Graham, he was in the running to play Frankenstein's creature in The Curse of Frankenstein.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he because of his height, he was one of the last few kind of that was considered for the role. Christopher Lee got it in the end, but how different things might have been had Bernard Bresslaw played the creature. Would Christopher Lee have ended up in Carry On films instead, you know?
Yes. Well, yeah, Lee had an odd relationship with Hammer at that time. They didn't seem to quite trust him, and I think that comes, well, I'm sure we'll discuss that in The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Dr. Jekyll, The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, what do you think of it, Graham?
Well, for those expecting a horror film, they're going to be very disappointed. But saying that, persevere, because I think it's a really interesting film. It does not feel like a Hammer film. I think that's really important to say.
That's interesting.
Everything from the photography, the music, the acting, the cast, the scriptwriter, and we'll talk, I'm sure, about Wolf Mankiewicz later.
Yes.
It does not look like a Hammer film, right from the opening score, which they've got Monty Norman, he of the theme from the James Bond.
Right,
down. So the music that you normally get in a Hammer film, it's not there. None of those signatures are there. So it stands out as a bit of a white elephant.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting white elephant, but it really stands apart from everything else Hammer are doing around 1959 and 1960. That's
right, because this was their real sort of classic, you know, when they were making a lot of the classics that we would think of as classic Hammer horrors, right, around this time, the Gothics, Frankenstein, Dracula, that kind of thing, yeah. And I actually, maybe it's because I'm not as big a fan of Hammer as a lot of other Hammer fans are. I really enjoyed this. Yeah. I think I like this more than a lot of other Hammer films of the era, personally.
I think its reputation has slowly grown over the years because it's doing something very adult, but not in terms of horror.
Yes.
It really turns its back on horror. Which, of course, later Hammer revisit in spades with Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde.
Yes.
They really are back to. Although again, it's a very different Hammer film in some other ways.
Yes.
But when you compare what else is going on in 1960, Brides of Dracula, The Mummy has come out the year before.
Yeah.
My favourite, The Stranglers of Bombay in 1959. Well, I will defend that film. To the death, and of course the comedy version, of the Ugly Duckling with Bernard Brown, which in actual fact I haven't seen.
Right.
One of the few Hammer films I haven't actually had a chance to look at. Right. It's also a bigger budget film.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks it actually, doesn't it?
It looks lush. I mean, it's photography, and it's the first film produced by Michael Carreras.
Yes,
James Carreras' son.
That's right.
So it's a really interesting. It's an interesting experiment for Hammer, which is not wholly successful, but there is much to enjoy in this film.
I agree. I really like it. Well, let's start by talking about how faithful an adaptation. How different is this to the versions, for example, the 1931 version, and compared to the novella? You know, what is it doing to the story here?
Well, it does a really interesting twist. So. I mean, again, if you think about it, there has never been a faithful... Well, there have been very few. I, Monster, which comes out in 1970, is quite a faithful adaptation of Jekyll and Hyde. But even the 1931 version is not a faithful adaptation of the novella. They keep some of the names like Poole.
Yeah.
But they introduced... The novella has very few women, if any. It's just servants. Of course, in the Barrymore silent version, they've got the Madonna and the whore. Here, we have Jekyll trapped in a loveless marriage with his wife, Kitty. Yeah. And she's conducting a blatant, flagrant affair with a cad played by Christopher Lee called Paul Allen.
Yes.
And Jekyll is obsessed with his work. He's also sort of an outsider. He's not he's seen him. He's sort of he's seen as a renegade, a fool, a crackpot. His friend Professor Ernst comes to sort of say to him, "You're wasting your time with these experiments of trying to find the other man."
Yeah.
And of course, so in this, Hyde cuckolds his own wife, or attempts to cuckold his own wife.
Yes.
So Hyde discovers that Kitty is having an affair with his so-called friend,
Yes.
Paul Allen, who is sponging money off him. But instead, when he changes to Hyde, he blackmails Allen. He basically puts him into debt.
Yeah.
And then says, well, I'll pay off all your debts if, in sort of true indecent proposal, we think about Robert Redford, if I can sleep with my own wife.
Yes.
So this is the twist. So it really revolves around sexual jealousy.
That's right.
I suppose the love triangle between Paul Allen, Hyde, Jekyll and Jekyll's wife.
That's right. So it's much more of a sort of psychological drama more than
much
anything.
more. And I think this is why it's not a horror film.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. And of course, like you mentioned, this was written by Wolf Mankiewicz, who wasn't a Hammer regular, right?
No.
He was kind of known for different types of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this film comes out in 1959, and it's worth sort of just painting in a picture that one of the things in terms of, and this really comes from British theatre, that along with the Royal Court Theatre, which is sort of produces the angry young men of people like Arnold Wesker, John Osborne, you've got another theatre in the East End called Stratford East, which is run by Joan Littlewood. Probably the most well-known play that she produces, which was also filmed, was Oh, What a Lovely War.
Of course.
And also plays and then films like Sheila Delaney's Taste of Honey. Wolf Mankiewicz is one of Littlewood's protégés. And he writes a novel called Make Me an Offer, which is then produced as a play, a musical, and then as a film. So it's interesting. Many of the sort of well-known actors and writers from that period come out of that stable. So Harry H. Corbett, who's in Carry On Screaming, was one of Littlewood's protégés. Apparently played a brilliant Richard III.
Right. Wow. Okay.
So Mankiewicz comes out of the theatre.
Yeah.
And so he has produced a musical film before this, Espresso Bongo.
Right. Yes.
With Lawrence Harvey. So he's someone who is just starting to make forays into film. So he's an interesting figure, and he is not the normal Jimmy Sangster the scriptwriter, or John Elder, who produced the bulk of Hammer's scripts. So he's new. He's also sort of he's someone who is seen as a hot young talent.
Right.
So he's paid a lot more. Again, this is an interesting Hammer film. It's got a bigger budget. He gets, I think, twice the normal fee for the screenplay. So he gets £4,000.
Wow.
The normal fee was about $2,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So he's a hotshot writer.
Yeah.
But of course, so he's new to the Hammer. So the style he writes in, and although it's directed by Terence Fisher, it's very, very different to other Hammer films.
Yeah, I guess, there is that more... I suppose in some ways it could be perceived as a bit more theatrical, right? There is a lot of kind of heavy dialogue scenes in this, a lot of wide shots and a lot of characters interacting. Yes. Yeah.
Particularly, yes. And that opening scene where you've got the exposition, it is quite stagey. Yet there are also some great there are some great sort of cinematic moments, and particularly, we'll come to it, I'm sure, the use of dance.
Oh my God, incredible, yeah. And actually it looks great. Like some of those sets and the lighting, it's quite luscious and quite extravagant, isn't it? Like,
and costumes, they actually they get a French costume designer,
right,
by the name of Mayo. So it's Hammer. Actually, they're not working on their normal tight budget.
No,
and it shows.
So that's quite nice. So I guess that stops it from feeling too stagey? In your
think
opinion?
so.
Yeah.
Yes. I'd like to. I'd love to see it on the big. I'd love to see it on the big screen.
Yeah. I think it. Yeah, I think you're right. It looks incredible. So Terence Fisher, obviously, he was already known for directing Hammer by this point, right? And do you think he does a good job of kind of creating this kind of version of Victorian London that we get here?
Well, it's a very strange version of Victorian London. Most of it is located in this strange place called the Sphinx Club, which bears very little resemblance. Well, it's a strange place. It's got 18th century footmen in wigs. It's got French can-can dancers.
Yes. It's like we're in the Moulin Rouge, right? Yeah.
So there is very little sense, in comparison with Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, where they really ramp up the Victoriana.
They really do. Yes, it's like you're at a tourist attraction in the London Dungeon or something. Yeah.
It doesn't and there are scenes where you do get the cliched Chinese opium den.
Yes.
And at one point where there's a sort of, again, a crossover between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Oscar Wilde's novel, only novel, and The Picture of Dorian Gray, where you've got Paul Allen taking Hyde on a sort of hedonistic tour of London, which involves wrestlers, wrestlers, an opium den, and then Hyde himself going off into a sort of a tavern where there's this strange scene where you've got a mother and her niece, little Mary, who she describes as a novice. Who the implication is that she's some sort of child prostitute.
Yes.
And of course, in his mind. So, but it is set in the Victorian period, but there's an odd amalgamation of things going on. It certainly is not as overtly Victorian as we get in Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde.
A lot of prostitutes in both films, though, feature heavily in these films.
They do, yes. They do, yes.
And so let's talk about Paul Massey, shall we?
Yes, Paul Massey.
And I guess there are two performances to talk about here with Paul Massey, but Dr. Jekyll, what do you think of him as Dr. Jekyll?
Well, you're laughing. Right?
Well, it's his funny voice.
You're laughing.
Yeah.
He's got a difficult... He's got this light voice for Hyde. And then this Kitty, I need you now, Kitty.
Yes.
Well, we shouldn't laugh because he's doing his best. He's doing his best.
Yes.
There's various versions of this. Paul Massey in an interview said that it was at his insistence that he wanted to play Hyde as well as Jekyll. Really, in retrospect, what Hammer should have done was what they did with Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, was to get another actor. Yeah. Possibly someone who looked like Paul Massey, or even someone like Christopher Lee to play Hyde.
Yes.
So what Massey does is that when he changes from Jekyll to Hyde, he changes voice.
Yes.
So Hyde has this mellifluous voice, like this, and then and sometimes, of course, there is one scene where he's actually having to do the two at once when he's facing himself in a mirror. He's also not helped by some terrible makeup. So when he is Jekyll, he's wearing these beetling eyebrows and a beard. So when he changes to Hyde, and again, you don't get any of the wonderful transformation scenes that we get with Frederick March. So he has a beard as Jekyll, which miraculously disappears as Hyde, and then comes back. So he's battling against that. And the problem he's also got is that his Hyde is not particularly charismatic. No,
they've made a conscious choice, haven't they, with this one, where, because previous adaptations, the Hyde is much more monstrous. It's much more, whereas Jekyll is this suave, kind of attractive, charismatic man. It's kind of the opposite here, isn't it? Jekyll, there's not much attractive about Jekyll.
No, he's not. The only person who likes him is the deaf is the
the little
mute
girl.
is the mute girl, and even she
She gets a bit
scared
scared,
off is scared off by him.
Yeah.
So he is rather an unattractive, and you can see, he's also as a neglectful husband.
Yeah.
And as a result, Kitty wanders off
Yes.
with the reprehensible but charming Paul Allen. So also it's difficult to understand why Norma Marler, playing the very glamorous Maria, the snake dancer,
Yes.
will be immediately attracted to Hyde. I mean, he does an okay job. He's doing his best, but it's difficult to see how charismatic he is to other women. In this. Whereas, of course, at least the reprehensible Paul Allen is actually, you can see where the attraction lies with Kitty.
Absolutely. Well, Christopher Lee is the king of that, isn't he? The kind of dangerous yet charismatic, dangerous yet attractive. That's his Dracula as well, in a way, isn't it? Christopher Lee, it's really fun to see him here in a sort of supporting role. It's kind of interesting that he wasn't given the title role of Jekyll or Hyde, right?
Yes, I think he was. I mean, he gets to play Hyde later in 1970 for Amicus's I, Monster.
Right.
In actual fact, saying that, it's actually a really good role for him.
Yeah. Yes, and apparently he himself said he quite enjoyed playing this role. Yeah. Great character, though, Paul Allen, right? Really interesting character.
He's interesting because also he does have some moral boundaries. He's a terrible cad.
Yes.
But when it comes to Hyde saying, well, I've got all this on you, I'll pay off all your debts, your gambling debts, if you let me sleep with your mistress.
Right.
And even there, it's at that point that's when he says no further.
Yes.
And similarly, when Hyde is beating Oliver Reed, a small role for Oliver Reed, who is playing possibly a pimp.
Yeah.
For two.
I wasn't quite sure if he was like a bouncer, a pimp. I didn't know what.
Or was he their client for the night? I don't know.
Yeah.
And he beats, and first of all, Paul Allen hits him.
Yeah.
But then Hyde is actually going to go hell for leather, and that's the point where Paul Allen stops him.
Yeah. There's a sort of scale of terrible men in this, isn't there? Right. And I think that in itself is interesting. And again, Dr. Jekyll, very much the kind of all-round moral good guy, isn't he?
Yes.
I suppose, in
Although,
a way.
of course, in Frederick March is saintly.
Yes, he is.
To the point. I mean, there's that great scene in the 1931 version where you've got the little girl, sort of suddenly throwing away her crutches. He's almost Christ-like.
Yes.
Where she says, "I can walk.
Yeah,
I can walk."
Yeah.
And of course, then he's devoting his time to the poor, which, of course, interestingly, his fiance's father doesn't approve of.
Right.
Doing such socialist, dangerous Fabian work.
Yeah, but I suppose this Dr. Jekyll not quite so sort of Christ-like in that same way.
Again, he's a sort of a reclusive obsessive.
Yes, absolutely. Who kind of, there's that interesting moment because obviously his wife is sort of done with him, like you say, she's going out having an affair, Kitty. But there is also that side of him where he wants her to stay in with him of an evening and that kind of thing, right? Yeah.
And also that scene where he's sexually aroused by his own wife.
Yes.
After she's come back with Paul Allen from the Sphinx Club, when he says, "I need you tonight, Kitty.
Yeah.
I need you tonight."
Yeah.
And she refuses him. So there's obviously sort of a non-sexual relationship between them.
Yeah. Well, like you said,
which he can only achieve with Hyde.
Yeah.
Which it's implied he rapes her at the end.
Absolutely.
As Hyde.
Absolutely.
So the only way he can achieve satisfaction with her is actually as this other persona.
There is something of a, like you mentioned, a sort of cuckold kind of narrative with him, isn't there?
But also aroused by his own cuckoldry.
Exactly. Yes. Like actually, that's his thing almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's where the real point of interest in that film is.
Yeah.
Where Hyde goes to the Sphinx Club and sees Kitty there.
Yeah.
And starts to lay this plot of actually how can I make my wife my mistress?
Yes, it's really interesting.
Which is a very sort of very dark place.
Yeah,
really.
it is.
It's something that someone like Harold Pinter does in a play like The Lover, where the husband plays this fantasy role of her afternoon lover.
Right, yeah.
Almost the only way he can seduce his wife is by playing another role.
Playing an affair, almost. That's really interesting. So, I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, Wolf Mankiewicz was kind of part of that scene. I wonder if there is kind of connective tissue here between this script and the kind of what was going on in theatre at the time then as well. This kind of interesting stuff.
It's interesting. I mean, certainly in theatre, despite the fact we've got a theatre censor, that just as Hammer are doing, theatre is attempting to push boundaries. So, in a play like Sheila Delaney's Taste of Honey, you've got a mixed race relationship and a teenage pregnancy.
Right.
You've also got one of the first gay characters in sort of, I suppose, a sort of mainstream play and film figure of Geoffrey.
Yeah.
And I also think Hammer have got one eye out to what's happening in European cinema.
Right. Yeah.
Which is work going on, particularly in horror cinema over in Italy.
Yeah.
Particularly.
Absolutely. Huge year. 1960. Huge year. You had Eyes Without a Face in France. You had Black Sunday coming from Italy. So these much more kind of explicit, kind of interesting, arty kind of horror films. Yeah.
And Hammer really push it.
Yeah.
I think in Two Faces of Dr. Jack. I think people will be surprised actually at how sexually transgressive this film is.
I agree. Well, it's funny actually because I bought the Blu-ray and I was quite surprised to see that even my Blu-ray was an 18 certificate.
Yes.
You don't get that much for many Hammer horror films these days, Really interesting that it still has that kind of adult sensibility about
and
it.
It was quite heavily censored.
Yeah.
And luckily the Blu-ray has got there's an interesting feature on the Blu-ray where you've got the censored little clip of the censored version of scenes and the uncensored.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So Kitty then, what do we think of this character of Kitty? Again, because actually not always great meaty female roles in Hammer, particularly early Hammer, right? But actually I think Kitty gets to do some really interesting stuff here.
And this is where I think Wolf Mankiewicz's background comes to the fore.
Yeah.
She's a much more complex figure.
Yeah.
So for example, her relation with Paul Allen is strange. At one point she says, I deserve nothing more than Paul Allen, i.e. a cad. When we first meet them in the Spinks Club, they even talk about their relationship coming to an end.
Yeah.
And he calls her Icy, my icy mistress.
Yeah.
Paul Hyde also described, his mistress, Hyde's mistress, Maria says to him, you go back to your cold, cold wife.
Yes.
And he says, what an interesting concept, cold, cold wife. So on the one hand, she knows that she's in a relationship that's going nowhere with Paul Allen, and she says, "Well, I think this relationship is coming to an end."
Yeah.
And he says, "I feel the chill of I feel the chill of you," but at the same time, then they get back together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's complex. So she's someone who is caught between being in a loveless marriage with Jekyll.
Yeah.
She's got a lover who she doesn't really quite like, yet she does like. And she's also then got this third person who she doesn't quite know whether she's attracted to or repelled. I think she's actually repelled by Hyde.
I think so. Yeah, she doesn't show many signs of being attracted to him, I think, does she? And it's interesting because, again, that the film makes the choice to make Hyde the much more good-looking, kind of the more charismatic version of Jekyll and Hyde, again, which is kind of interesting, an interesting twist on, previous versions that we've seen.
Yes.
But also, he is scary. I mean, like you say, with that moment when he lays into Oliver Reed, Hyde in all versions so far that we've seen, he is one of the meanest kind of horror movie baddies, right?
Yes.
In a lot of ways, I think.
Yes, yeah. he has that cruelty. He has a cruelty.
That's right. He's a sadist. Yeah,
yes.
yeah, and obviously there's often a lot of sexual violence involving Hyde as well. Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. So he's really good. And Dawn Addams, we should say, as Kitty, is great, right?
She's wonderful.
Yeah.
She's someone who, at one point, she even considers trying to get Jekyll committed to an asylum.
Yeah. Yeah,
She says, well, if his work is, his obsession and the fact that he seems to be sort of completely obsessed with his work, she says to her friend, Ernst, their mutual friend Ernst, can I get him committed?
Yeah. It's so funny. I know. Yeah, everyone is kind of a little bit immoral in this, aren't they? I suppose it's kind of varying degrees of sin going on. I think, right? Let's talk about the Norma Marler character.
Ah, yes. Well, Norma Marler. Well, she's Norma Marler.
She arrives as Maria, who is a kind of, what is she? A sort of exotic dancer or something?
Dancer.
Yeah.
She does a snake dance, which again is pretty daring.
Yeah.
I remember last time we spoke, we were talking about the reptile and that strange sitar.
Yes, which he then smashes up. Yes.
Well, here you get a film made in 1960 of Norma Marler filleting a snake.
Yes.
Wearing, and the camera very much going in at sort of crotch level.
Yeah.
It's
quite a prolonged scene, isn't it? Yeah.
And you see the head of the snake
in her mouth,
and taking it out. There's also, for those of us who like pantalettes,
for those of us, like
pantalettes, there is a very long and extended and quite explicit can dancing scene.
There is,
which goes on for quite some time with full frontal.
Yes, absolutely, quite explicit.
Yes. So this is, and also the scenes with Norma Marler and Hyde, where we see her undressing. We see them in bed together, which is, again, very unusual for a Hammer film at the time. Yeah. And we see them unclothed.
Yeah.
So this is Hammer really pushing at the boundaries in 1960. We're not going to get that again until the early 1970s with The Vampire Lovers and Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's not sex as a subtext in this. I mean, it is actually overtly about sex, the whole film, really.
And this is what I think, again, makes it a really interesting adaptation. And again, we're there. It's interesting that we've got pre-code Universal pushing the boundaries with, I think, that long extended scene of Miriam Hopkins swinging her leg and saying, come back soon.
Yes.
Come back soon.
Yeah.
We've got pre-code Universal. Yeah. And then we've also got Hammer really pushing against the censor at a time where, they're not allowing much to, the censor is sort of not allowing. I'm very surprised in Curse of Frankenstein that we get that shot of the shotgun blowing part of Christopher Lee's eye away.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's really interesting that they got away with as much as they did here, although, like you say, it was censored. And I believe the scene where Maria sort of deep throats the snake, that was cut, wasn't it?
It was completely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I'm not surprised.
And a lot of the close-ups of her dancing. And they used a dancer called Julie Mendez, who incidentally did the choreography for Carry On Up the Khyber.
Oh, fantastic. There you go. I mean, we're going to get a lot of crossovers over the next few weeks. I like this. And it does get dark as the story progresses. Like you say, it ends up with Hyde raping Kitty, essentially this man raping his own wife, right? Which is, it goes to some dark places as it goes on, doesn't it? Yeah.
And the whole thing of, if we think about the Victorian period of where, rape was permissible in marriage. And right up until relatively recently in the UK.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I think that raises some interesting questions, doesn't it, I suppose, because is that technically her husband? Is it not? It's Hyde, it's not Jekyll.
Yes.
All of that is really interesting. It's a shame that we don't get, and the film isn't really interested in this, we don't get any clever transitions or camera tricks, do we?
Not at all. And we do in Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. There's some very clever transitions.
Yeah.
But it's put... it's a shame. It's not done well.
No.
But again, I don't think Wolf Mankiewicz was interested in that.
No, you can tell it's not what this film is prioritising, is it, at all? It's not, and maybe that's what some people had a problem with, compared to the sort of filmmaking of some of the other movies at the time.
And it was the problem that Hammer had when they tried to sell this film to America. It was only AIP, American International Pictures, that took it up rather than Columbia, who normally took up Hammer's films, and they didn't really know how to market it.
Right,
because it's not, as I say, it is not a horror. It is not a horror film.
No, it's really interesting. Yeah, although it is quite disturbing as well.
It is. Yeah. It's psychologically quite a complex film.
It's more in the tradition of the sort of thrillers like Diabolique or some of those movies of the 1950s, isn't it? It's got more of that kind of a vibe, which I love.
Yes.
So and the ending is interesting, and I believe there were changes made to the ending at the last minute, because it does feel a bit abrupt, doesn't it? I think
Hammer in true Hammer style always try and conclude things with a fire. They were originally wanted to have Jekyll convicted of Hyde's crimes. Jekyll was framed for Hyde's crimes, and he was going to be at the hangman's noose, and then just changes to Hyde at the end,
at the gallows.
But they'd run out of money then.
So instead he sort of collapses onto a chaise longue or something, and then changes or dies.
They have an inquest where he's clear. Well, where Hyde is cleared. He says that he was held prisoner by Jekyll when the laboratory goes up in flames. Yeah. But then, of course, he changes right at the end, and of course changes and degenerates in true Dorian Gray style. He's aged.
That's right.
It's interesting. There are similarities with another Hammer film in 1959, comes out really the year before, The Man Who Could Cheat Death, who is using a sort of an elixir of life to Anton Differing, who is using this elixir to stay young. Yeah. So Jekyll, each time he changes in Two Faces, is starting to get slightly older, and that's made very explicit at the end of the film.
Yeah, really interesting. I think I can understand why for some people it's not a favourite, I suppose, but I think it holds up pretty well.
I think it does, and its reputation has grown steadily amongst Hammer aficionados.
Yeah.
So I rate it as a really interesting experiment, an anomaly. Yeah. In Hammer's canon, but a very interesting anomaly.
Agreed. And actually, quick shout out, we have mentioned him, but Oliver Reed, who is in this movie for all of 5 minutes. His first Hammer role, I believe, right?
Yes, I believe so. And he turns up. Again, it's interesting. Hammer, we'll talk about Ralph Bates later, but Hammer have a good track record of getting homegrown talent. Yeah. So we see Oliver Reed in 1961 in Curse of the Werewolf. I don't think one of Hammer's best films. Yeah. But he also turns up in a really interesting film, again, an odd film for Hammer, The Damned.
Right, yes.
Or Incense for the Damned, I think it's called in the States. And then in one of their really interesting psychological thrillers, Paranoid.
Yeah.
But of course, it's not until he meets Ken Russell and Women in Love that really make him an international star.
Absolutely. The Devils, of course.
The Devils, of course.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Yeah, but there he is, looking very sort of thin and clean cut compared to the Oliver Reed we think of,
the bloated Oliver Reed.
Yeah. I think of the barrel-chested, kind of moustached,
wrestling. Wrestling with Alan Bates.
That's right.
But it's a small role, but it's nice. It's nice, and of course he's using the voice, that beautiful voice amazing. Reed had.
And that's the thing. I mean, maybe it's a little bit. I've noticed people are a little bit harsh on Paul Massey, but I think the different, there's something about, Christopher Lee and even Oliver Reed in that brief moment there on screen, and just how much they pop off the screen, in comparison.
And Massey's a good actor. I mean, he's in probably not so familiar for American audiences, but he's in one of the great comedy films that around about the same year, I think 1960, the Tony Hancock's film The Rebel. Which is a brilliant brilliant comedy about the art world.
Right, yeah.
So he's in that, and he's also in one of the first British films that looks at race relations in Britain, called Sapphire, which is it's a murder mystery, but it brings in the Windrush generation who have sort of come to the UK. So it's one of the first plays to look at racial tensions in post-war British cinema.
Oh, wow.
And he's in that. But he's a Canadian actor. He goes back to Canada, and he does mostly does theatre after The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
That's interesting. There you go. So a lot of kind of theatrical links to this movie in
Very
general,
much so,
right?
yes.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. A quick reminder to everyone listening to this week's episode. If you're a Hammer Horror fan, we've got a brand new podcast, part of the Evolution of Horror Network, in which hosts Becky Dark and Kevin Lyons are going to be working their way through every single Hammer Horror film in chronological order. Here's a little trailer for Hammer Time, a Hammer Horror podcast.
Hello and welcome to Hammer Time, a Hammer Horror podcast, part of the Evolution of Horror Network. I'm Becky Dark, a film critic and Hammer newbie, and I'm joined by my co-host, human encyclopedia of film and TV, and Hammer expert, Kevin Lyons.
Hello, Becky.
Hi, Kev. How are you?
I'm terribly excited. This is something very special to me, Hammer. So there's not many things I massively nerd out about, but Hammer is one of them. So, brace yourself, basically.
I'm so excited. We've been talking about this for a little while now. It's amazing to finally get on mic with you and start working our way through these films.
Excellent. Can't wait to get into more.
In this podcast, Kevin and I will be watching and discussing every horror film in Hammer's back catalogue, kicking off with the Quatermass Experiment in 1955.
It's coming for you from space to wipe all living things from the face of the earth.
And finishing on To the Devil a Daughter in 1976.
Te adoro et te invoco.
We'll cover all the Gothic classics, from Dracula to Frankenstein to The Plague of the Zombies.
But no corpse can remain at peace in this village of the undead, this land of the zombies.
We'll examine the way Hammer evolved in its later era with its lesbian vampire tales and vampire martial arts movies.
Hammer, Masters of Horror, and the Shaw Brothers, Masters of Kung Fu.
And we'll even dip into some of Hammer's thrillers, such as Hysteria and The Nanny.
Betty Davis as The Nanny.
Kev has seen every Hammer film, but I'll be watching most of them for the very first time. So whether you're a Hammer superfan or a Hammer newbie, join us on this journey.
Help me. You must. You're my only hope. You must.
Subscribe to Hammer Time wherever you get your podcasts.
Now it's time to thank our sponsor for this episode, NordVPN. This season, we are going to be talking quite a lot about the dangers and perils of technology, particularly the online world. So it feels like a perfect time to sign up to NordVPN, the best way to protect your online private data, like your bank details, your passwords, and your online identity. I get to travel a lot with my job, and I find NordVPN super useful. It's good to have on when I'm using my laptop in a public place. NordVPN protects all of my data when I'm on public Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or a library. It's also super useful when you need to access films or TV shows that are only available in other regions. So when I was in the US recently, I switched on NordVPN, switched my region to the UK, so I had a choice of accessing the Shudder back catalogue in the UK and the US. Super useful, especially when trying to find the films that we're going to be covering this season. You get premium cybersecurity for literally the price of a cup of coffee per month, and one NordVPN account can be used on 10 different devices. We are offering some exclusive discounts, so to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, head to nordvpn.com/evolutionofhorror. This link will give you 4 free extra months on a 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/evolutionofhorror, and we'll list the link in the show notes. Graham, let's move on because we've got another really interesting film to talk about. We're going to discuss Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde from 1971.
Dr. Jekyll, Sister Hyde.
man or woman, or both. In this film, you will actually see the sinister Dr. Jekyll change in mind and body into the totally evil Sister Hyde.
It is I who exist, Dr. Jekyll, not you. It is I who will be rid of you. Rid of you! Rid of you!
Hammer invites you to share the agony of a man whose body is possessed by a strange passion to murder and beyond.
They must be female, no more than 20 years old.
There will be a different kind of victim tonight. And then the tug-of-war will be ended between us.
What's changed here in this particular adaptation?
Oh, a lot's changed.
A lot's changed.
A lot has changed. Well, here we have the tale of the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde has become the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde.
Yes.
So we have here a scientist who is, first of all, experimenting for a noble cause, trying to find a cure for cholera, until he's persuaded by his friend, Professor Robertson, not to waste his time trying to find cures for infections that kill off most of London during the 1880s, but instead to change his research to look for the elixir of life, which he realizes can be found through female hormones, which sets him on a murderous path of killing prostitutes. First of all, getting his material from Burke and Hare,
yes.
And then coincidentally, this all happens to coincide with the Whitechapel murders.
Yes.
Now, there is some logic for this because Stevenson's novella is written in 1886, and the Whitechapel murders are 2 years later in 1888.
It's quite a clever thing. It's sort of suggesting Dr. Jekyll is the Jack the Ripper here, right? You know, which is great. There's no actual mention, I believe, of Jack the Ripper throughout the whole script, is there? Does anyone mention Jack the Ripper himself?
They just say the Whitechapel murders.
They do, yeah. So
we know where we know where they are. I mean, first of all, Jekyll uses the services of, well, we'll come to him later, a mortuary attendant called Biker.
He's brilliant.
Played by Philip Maddock.
Yeah.
And then Jekyll uses Burke and Hare. But then he starts doing some of the work himself.
Yes.
But then he realizes that once he injects himself with his female hormones, he then transitions into Edwina Hyde. Who he passes off as his sister to his nosy upstairs neighbours.
I want to talk about the nosiest neighbours I've ever seen in my life.
They're a nightmare. Every time you poke your head out, Susan Spencer is always there.
Has she got nothing else to do with her life?
She is always looking out the window.
Yeah.
and obsesses on the handsome Dr. Jekyll downstairs. So he never gets in fact, probably one of the reasons he turns into Sister Hyde is to actually get out of the house without her. I mean, she even finds excuses of getting in, of visiting Dr. Jekyll by the fact that she needs to collect a tray.
That's right. That's right. Any excuse.
She would be my neighbour from
Absolutely.
hell.
Hate it. It was getting me angry just watching it. and then, of course, like you say, when he transitions into Sister Hyde, her brother becomes obsessed with Edwina Hyde, right, as well. So it's with these two siblings fall in love with the same person. Yeah.
And this film flirts and explores the idea of same-sex.
It does.
Of same-sex desire and trans issues. It doesn't do it in a very deep way, and we'll talk about ways in which it attempts.
Yeah, I wish it had pushed it a little bit further.
Very much so, because there's some really interesting ideas.
Yeah.
So of course, like you say, Jekyll as Sister Hyde has a brief affair with Susan's brother Howard.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where they're canoodling on the wet leg chaise lounge when he says, "If you could only feel how I feel as a man towards you," and she says, "I can."
Yeah.
I
Brilliant.
can feel aroused as a man.
Yeah.
And there are moments where we see very quick camera flashes when Sister Hyde commits a murder, when she kills Professor Robertson. We suddenly see Jekyll
in a wig,
yes, and a dress,
yes.
So, or when she changes, she's appalled. We see the transition because her arm suddenly becomes hairy, and she's appalled at her maleness.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
So there is. Transsexuality is explored.
It is.
But it's skimmed.
I agree. I mean, I think the whole conceit is funny at the beginning, how they say the miracle of, the elixir of youth, we have to use female hormones because of women's silky skin or something.
Yes.
They say, right, as well. It's
and he
so
works,
funny.
and of course he works out, first of all, he does his experiments on flies.
Yes.
And then he realises that the flies have laid eggs.
That's right.
And so it starts with that.
Yeah, the fly has transitioned. That's right.
So the fly has changed sex.
Yeah.
But of course, then there are lots of discontinuities in this film because, of course, first of all, Jekyll as a male commits the murders, but then Edwina Hyde commits them.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting, isn't it? This is the first time where we've seen the Jekyll character, in a way, as monstrous as the Hyde character.
Yes.
He was Jack the Ripper before he even turned into Hyde, right?
And he only really realises that when it says it's a poster saying, police are seeking a tall man with a top hat.
And it quickly cuts to him burning it on the fire as well. It's really funny, yeah.
So then, Sister Hyde, Edwina Hyde is carrying out those murders.
Yeah.
And of course, then it's a battle of wills.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. It's juggling a lot, this film, isn't it? And it's a little bit messy, but I did really enjoy all of everything it was doing. It's a Jack the Ripper sort of slasher movie. It's a Jekyll and Hyde movie. Yes. It's a Burke and Hare story. It's got everything.
And for that, we need to look to its writer, Brian Clemens.
Right.
Now, Brian Clemens is probably most well known for being the principal writer and creator of The Avengers, that series which is syndicated, made in the UK, but syndicated to America. Huge success during the 1960s.
Yeah.
But it's got all the hallmarks of Brian Clemens and Albert Fennell.
Right.
That the Avengers will throw everything. So one episode that you'll have Diana Rigg in a Marquis de Sade, going back to the 18th century trappings in Marquis de Sade, dressed as a dominatrix. You'll have another episode where they're battling robots, the Cybernauts.
Amazing.
So the Avengers plays with genre in a very postmodern 60s style. Yeah. And so, of course, he's doing the same here. This is a time where Hammer is starting to get outside producers,
right?
And so they've got Clemens in for this, and this is why it throws everything in.
Yeah.
So you've got the Whitechapel murders, you've got Burke and Hare, you've got Jekyll and Hyde, and again he does this later for another film he does with Hammer. And again, it's a film which has gone up in people's estimation. Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter.
Yes.
Which, if you think of something like Van Helsing,
yeah,
it was way ahead, where it's using the action genre.
Yeah.
To sort of look at it's using the sort of vampire genre and adventure genre. It wasn't very succcul,
right?
But it's a film which people now have started to increasingly reassess.
Yeah.
So and also, of course, the jokiness. Clemens likes lots of jokes and puns, and there's a broad strain of comedy in this film, which there isn't in The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is much more tongue in its cheek, larger than life characters everywhere, yes. Right? From the mortician to the sex workers to the blind man. Everyone is a kind of almost cartoonish kind of caricature here. Yeah.
Yes. I'm sure we'll talk about some of those.
Oh, yeah.
Subsidiary characters within this film.
So this one obviously directed by Roy Ward Baker.
Yeah.
And like you say, we're in the 70s here. We're the later era of Hammer. Can you feel that? Have things really changed from
very
the
much
early
so.
days?
Yeah. Oh, very much so. I mean, it's much more explicit in terms of sexuality. So we've got 2 nude scenes in
yes.
this. So 71 is a vintage year for late Hammer. We've got Twins of Evil.
Yes.
We've got Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, which I think is the best Hammer mummy film. You've got that. You've got Vampire Circus, which I think is still one of Hammer's best vampire films.
Yeah.
So you've got, they've got some some bangers coming out in that year. You've just had the vampire lovers the year before. You also had Horror of Frankenstein and Lust for a Vampire, which are not so good.
Yes.
But so 71, they've really got their mojo. They've got their mojo back.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about, how does this Victorian London compare to the previous Victorian London we were talking about?
It's got every Victorian cliche in the book. It's got fog. It's got peelers. It's got organ grinders.
Yes, we've even got a woman there is basically a Nancy from Oliver sort of singing. It's very post Oliver, this film, isn't it? Yeah.
Around every dark corner, he'll be there, waiting, hoping he'll be there. A song Brian Clemens writes. But she's interesting. Yes, it is all very it does all get a bit Nancy, but it's a really interesting figure because she's like the angel of death.
Right.
She passes through the pubs and the streets, and it's the figure that it's waiting. Jack the Ripper is waiting for her.
Yes.
If you think about sort of a play like Frank Wiedekind's Lulu, where at the end in that play, Lulu is waiting to be killed by Jack the Ripper.
That's right, yeah.
So it's almost as if she's waiting and welcoming her death, sort of in a masochistic way.
Yeah.
So she passes through almost like this spectral figure.
Yeah.
So in actual fact, yes, the song does. And as I say, we've also got organ grinders.
Yeah.
We've got lots of sort of cliche 19th century sex workers.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
Tell him everything's going up. Have to charge £5,000. Everything's going up.
Yes, exactly. So London also reminds me, I mean, not at all set in Victorian London, but it reminds me of Peeping Tom a bit as well, this movie.
Yes.
There were some odd parallels. I kept thinking of Peeping Tom, the idea of the killer living downstairs from a woman that is in love with him. You've got the blind characters. You've got it will cost you £5 like sex workers in London,
There's that great line one of them has, was it Virginia Wetherall says, I'm very popular with gentlemen on account of I speak fluent French.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. So I mean, I love all of that. Again, it kind of, you could never accuse this film of feeling slow or dry or anything. It's very silly, but it's
goes
great
on.
fun.
It continues at a great pace with a lot as you say, with a lot going on.
So Ralph, we haven't really got many of our, I guess, classic Hammer regulars here. There's no Christopher Lee, there's no Peter Cushing or anything like that. But how do you find Ralph Bates here as Jekyll?
Well, Ralph Bates does a competent job. But the film is Martine Bezek's as Sister Hyde, as Edwina Hyde. I mean, Ralph Bates is interesting. He's again, American audiences probably not know much about Ralph Bates, but certainly he's a stalwart of British television. And he plays a really villainous character in a mid-1970s BBC series of Poldark.
Oh, yes, yeah.
He's great in that, and also plays a hapless divorcee in a sitcom by John Sullivan called Dear John. And he also dies very early. He has he's taken from us very, very early. But again, he's another Hammer protege. Right. We meet him first in Taste the Blood of Dracula. Yeah. Not one of Hammer's best Dracula films. Although Scars of Dracula, I think is worse. Is pretty awful. But then suddenly we've got the last two, which we've spoken about, where Hammer back on course with Dracula AD 1972 and Satanic Rites. And he's also in Fear in the Night, which is again one of Hammer's great psychological horror films. And he's also in Horror of Frankenstein, one of the Hammer's very misconceived comedy horrors, which is really pretty difficult to watch. So, but Ralph Bates does his best here. He's okay. He's okay. But the film belongs to its subsidiary characters. Gerald Sims playing Professor Robertson, Philip Maddock playing Biker, and Burke and Hare. I think. And they actually are they're the main characters, along with the cast of London prostitutes.
That's right. Well, I yes. If anything, I could have done with a bit more Sister Hyde than Dr. Jekyll, actually.
She doesn't talk for a long time.
She doesn't talk for a long time. When he turns into her, it's fleeting before she turns back again. And actually, I was always found myself getting a bit frustrated when we returned back to Ralph Bates every time.
Yeah, precisely. She's Martine Bezic is another. Someone who has sort of periodically worked for Hammer. She was in a film called Slave Girls, which is again not. I'm actually I'm sort of mentioning most of Hammer's worst films on this podcast, which I really shouldn't be, because I love Hammer, but that really is. Actually, in fact, it reminds me of Carry On Up the Khyber. Right. It has Carry On Up the Khyber. Carry On Tarzan. The Tarzan.
Oh God, Up the Jungle.
Under the jungle, where they've got a lost all-female tribe, and it's a very similar plot in Slave Girls.
Oh God, yeah, but and she was a Bond girl, right?
She was indeed,
I believe, yeah, and she is great in this. I mean, she's got so much, even without talking, she's got so much more charisma than Jekyll, I think.
And the happy accident that they both look like. In fact, even down to the mole.
Well, is that why they gave him such annoying hair? Because he's got very weird hair.
He's got beautiful hair.
Yes,
it's very lustrous.
Yes, exactly. I thought that's why they're doing it. And again, there is almost a hint at a sort of gender fluidity to him. I think,
he looks androgynous. He does look androgynous.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
he does.
He's a pretty.
He's a pretty boy.
Pretty boy.
That's right. So yeah, I suppose that is deliberate, and I do like that. And the transitions. How do you? Because they do a lot of stuff with hands, don't they? They do a lot of stuff with hands and arms.
Yes, which is great. As you said, there is the one thing where she looks appalled at
a hairy man arm,
which was actually achieved by obviously someone putting their arm underneath her armpit. Yeah, but it works, and the transition scene is very cleverly achieved through mirrors and the chair.
Yes,
without actually having to do full frontal effects as they do in Spencer Tracy and the Frederick March version.
Yeah, that's right. Or it will happen sort of behind a stained glass window or something like that.
Which is nice, right? and it's cleverly done. I mean, there's very interesting use of editing in this film. The opening where you've got the butcher's shop and a hair being sort of chopped up with a butcher's cleaver, and the murder. Yeah. So there's some clever cutting in this film, and again, it's Roy Ward Baker, who again is an interesting director.
Yeah, do you rate him? Compared to Terence Davis? Do you think? Terence Fisher. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I opinion is divided. I know Kevin Lyons is a big Terence Fisher fan.
Yeah.
I'm not. I think he's a competent director, but I don't. Yeah. I can never see his signature.
No.
Roy Ward Baker, I think, is a much more accomplished director. But then Hammer never went in for auteur directors.
No.
They didn't trust them.
No.
And they were producing so many films.
That's right. It's not that kind of a thing, is it? It's the studio system rather than the auteur system, isn't it? Absolutely. So it's almost like you don't want these directors to make their marks almost, right?
Whereas Ruben Mamilin, his fingerprints are all over that fantastic camera. The change where the camera is going around at 360 degrees. You've got his own heartbeat.
No, it's amazing.
The dream sequence. Which is
all those long takes as well.
The long
tracking shots.
And also that, remember this is 1931. And you've got the point of view shots at the beginning, which are absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, I thought it was astonishing, that film. Yeah, unbeaten actually in terms of Jekyll and Hyde adaptations. Yeah.
And a good dream sequence though in the Spencer Tracy version. We've got that fantastic image, highly erotic but disturbing of Ingrid Bergman and his fiancée as horses.
Oh yeah.
And he's sort of riding them and they're craning their necks.
Yeah.
It's both erotic and disturbing.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because that one was obviously made post kind of the Hays Code, and so they had to use slightly more suggestive, I suppose, kind of means. Yeah, that's really interesting. So in this movie, let's talk about those other subsidiary characters. Let's talk about the Burke and Hare characters in this then, and those performances. They are great.
They're a great double act. Yeah. And they have some great dialogue when when they bring a young woman in who they've murdered, and he says, "Yeah, she was pretty before that cartwheel went over her face."
Yeah, because of course, so it begins with Jekyll, like you say. There is this kind of moral question in this, isn't there, about is it worth killing some people for the greater good, essentially, right? You know, is it worth him, you know, because what starts off with just using bodies from the morgue, then paying Burke and Hare to get him bodies, and then him committing murders himself, all in the name of science.
And this comes through in a lot of these films. So you've got at one point Hare going, "You got to do bad to do good.
Yeah, exactly.
And then also Susan Spencer is also saying, well, he actually puts the moral question to her.
He does.
And it's actually her response that says yes.
Yeah, you should do it. Yeah,
you should do it. And this comes up again and again and again in many of these films that you're going to be looking at in the series and beyond.
I wish they'd maybe push that a little bit further. Like, you don't get much of a grasp of Dr. Jekyll as a character in this, and how he feels about the fact that he's stabbing women to death in alleys and stuff. Like, I don't know, it doesn't really give you much of how he's feeling about all of that, does it? Really, you know.
This is also Hammer. There is a sort of glorification. This is a film where we're seeing blood spurting onto breasts,
absolutely,
and knives going through people's neck.
So
there is a prurience.
Absolutely.
To this
absolutely.
film
There's a kind of pre-slasher element to this.
Yeah, you could argue there is a sort of slasher element to this film.
Yeah,
another ingredient to it.
Definitely. And that mortician character is brilliant.
Biker
really made me laugh.
Well, of course, he's a necrophiliac. There's a great line when Jekyll is choosing sort of victims, he says, "Don't touch that one. I like her."
Yeah, I know. Just a little throwaway necrophilia joke there in the midst. I loved it.
Or when Jekyll is saying, "I'm looking for women. I'm looking for young women of about 20. It's just the age I like."
Yeah.
Or when Jekyll chooses another woman, the biker says, "No accounting for taste."
Yes.
There's no accounting for taste. And he's played by Philip Maddock, a Welsh actor who, often plays suave villains, playing a Cockney mortician biker.
Great
which
fun.
Is strange but inspired casting.
Really interesting. And then let's talk about these two insufferable neighbours that live upstairs, Graham.
The Spencers.
The Spencers. And the poor mum. I feel sorry for the mum, actually.
Who mostly spends her time playing patience.
Yes, she does.
But Susan Spencer is one of the most irritating people in Hammer films. She is, she really hasn't got enough to do.
Oh. No.
Every time Jekyll's coming in or coming out to collect some wine, she's there.
That's right. Is this a commentary on what life was like for single women in Victorian England?
Yes.
Very little to do apart from find a man, basically. Yeah.
And her brother is constantly undermining her.
Yes.
Played by Lewis Fielder, who is great.
He's great. He's that kind of cad type character. Yeah.
And of course, he torments her all the time. So she's saying, "Oh, well, what a man! Dr. Jekyll's a man of such pure intention. He's always working." And then, of course, he sees him going out and goes, "Where could he be going tonight, dear sister? Your dear Dr. Jekyll."
Yes, exactly. Well, because there's that brilliant moment when Jekyll transforms into Hyde for the first time, and she's having a little feel of her breasts, for the first time. And then which
is needed because, of course, it's suddenly
discovering a new body, right? Yeah, absolutely. And Howard walks in at that exact moment. And again, they got no respect for privacy.
Nope.
Walk straight in.
Yep. Yeah.
Howard gets an eyeful as soon as he walks in, doesn't he?
And Susan Spencer is always knocking at his door constantly with any excuse, as I say, to bring a tray up.
Yeah.
When his mother, her mother says, "Well, there is that tray downstairs, Susan. You might want to retrieve."
Yeah.
At one point, her brother says, "Well, perhaps when Jekyll invites her to the opera, and of course he's changed to Edwina, so he can't go."
Yeah.
And she's waiting to... Well, of course, this also nearly leads to her demise because she goes out in order to save face to the opera. And, of course, that's when Edwina wants to get rid of her as well.
Right. Yes.
Dear Sister Susan.
Yes.
He says at one point when Howard is canoodling with her on the chaise lounge.
Yeah, it's a difficult. What do you make of Hyde, the character in this then? Because again, there isn't so much of a distinction, is there? There's not sort of the good one and the bad one, really, in the same way.
Well, we haven't got that. We haven't got that dichotomy, unless, of course, we count Susan Spencer.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
But of course, then it goes back, doesn't it, to the whole idea of Eve.
Yeah.
And sort of the evil nature of women.
Yeah, because she is. I suppose there is a slight more sort of glee with Hyde in what she's doing compared to Jekyll, right? There's slight more kind of reluctance maybe with Jekyll.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's also interest, as I said, I always, you make a good point where you say that you wish they'd explored the sexuality element. Because there's a great moment when Howard encounters Jekyll outside a corset shop.
That's right. He's just coming out of the corset shop, isn't he? Yeah.
And he's simultaneously Edwina and Henry when he says he reaches out to touch Howard.
That's right.
As Edwina, and he's appalled.
Yeah.
He's appalled that he's making a pass at him as another man.
Yeah.
So that whole idea is this film about a man who is actually unsure about his own sexuality?
Is it Victorian repressed sexuality? The classic kind of, which I suppose Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde has explored this whole time, but this is a different way, an interesting way, actually. That idea of
because we don't know in the novella. It's never named what Hyde actually gets up to. We see the murder. We see the murder of the old gentleman, which of course does look as if it's a bit of importuning. The old gentleman, the old gentleman actually approaches Hyde,
right,
and possibly propositions him.
Right.
I know there's been some scholarly work that argue that it's a queer text.
That's right. Sarah Cook mentioned that on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, that there are a lot of kind of homoerotic subtext and themes in the original text, which obviously there wasn't at all in the 1931 version, but it is back here actually in a big way.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Well, there's one point Robertson says, when he says, "I'm experimenting with female hormones," he says, "Well, don't get too close to me, my dear chap."
Exactly. Just a lot of repressed men here.
Yeah, a lot of lecherous men
a lot of lecherous men
in this film.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely has that 70s Hammer exploitation vibe, doesn't it? A lot of explicit shots of boobs and that kind of thing.
Yes. Although not as much as some of the other Hammer films that are taking place. So compared to Lust, Twins of Evil or Lust for a Vampire, or even where really it is just an excuse to look at a lot of young nude women.
Yes, exactly.
Here, I think the nudity is handled quite sensitively, and it does have a justification.
Well, absolutely. Once again, it is a story sort of about sex and about sexuality and about gender and all of that kind of stuff, isn't it? Yeah. But like you said, it doesn't quite go far enough with that because it's still a Hammer film. It's still really having fun with all of the kind of genre thrills, isn't it? Throughout, I think
it is. Yeah, it is, and you can see that. You can see that there is an element of a romp within this. So, again, it's a horror film, but it's not. It's not a scary. It's not a disturbing film.
I wouldn't say so. No, it's a good climax scene. I like the rooftop kind of moment. I think that stuff's handled
Shades
quite
of
well.
Oliver.
Yeah, very much so.
Shades of Oliver.
Yeah. But I think I guess compared to the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, it does feel it moves along and it's more exciting, isn't it? In a kind of classic cinematic way.
Yeah. Which Brian Clemens, with a long track record of writing for television.
Yeah.
And writing within an hour's format. The Avengers was an hour long, that he rattles along at pace, which Wolfgang Mankiewicz, I get the impression that he's still got one foot in theatre.
Right. Were fans, more into this film than the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll? Was this received more?
It was in a double. Yeah, I think so. And it was in a double bill with Blood from the Mummy's Tomb,
right?
Which again is, I think, one of Hammer's most interesting. Apart from The Mummy in 1959, I think it's Hammer's standout standout Egyptology film.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, that's good. So do you think this film kind of holds up well? Is it a favourite of yours?
It is a favourite. Yeah, it's certainly it's one of my favourite films.
Yeah, it's great fun, isn't it? Really, really good. Well, there you go. Anything else you want to mention on this movie before we wrap up? I think we've covered most of the
I think
weird and wonderful elements.
The only thing I would say, just to people who haven't, and I hope people have watched it, but if you haven't watched it, another film that comes out at the same year as Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde is Hands of the Ripper.
Oh, yeah.
And it would be worthwhile watching those as a double bill because they're, again, exploring similar territory.
Yeah.
In Hands of the Ripper, you've got the daughter of Jack the Ripper who has who sees her father at a very early age coming back with the bloody knife and I think killing her mother.
Right.
But it triggers PSD. Well, for her, post-traumatic stress disorder is actually becoming Jack the Ripper.
Right, excellent.
And so again, there's if you like fog-bound London, lots of Victorian prostitutes talking about calling each other dearie and and how about Time for Half a Crown? You're into really deep Hammer Victoriana. So watch those films as a double bill.
I love that. That reminds me, Graham, of a play which I believe you showed us at uni. What's the play? I think it was from around this era where the guy believes he's Jack the Ripper and then he believes he's Jesus Christ. It's in two halves. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I can't remember what it was now.
The Ruling Class.
That's it, The Ruling Class.
Which they made into a film with Peter O'Toole.
That's it. I think that was what we watched.
Yes.
I think that was,
and of course, what Peter Barnes is attempting to do in that play is he makes the link between the fact that the aristocracy are the murderers of working class people.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
So at one point he thinks he's Jesus.
Yes.
And then he's
murdering women. Yeah.
It's a bonkers play, and it's an equally bonkers film.
Yes,
but it's great. It's Peter O'Toole tearing up the scenery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that just sprung to mind there, talking about Jack the Ripper.
Pop to the video shop this weekend. Get Hands of the Ripper, get Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, and get the Ruling Class.
Incredible. Well, there you go. I think these two have been really interesting because in some ways they kind of have the opposite pros and cons, I think. You know, like we talked about how the two faces of Dr. Jekyll, actually quite a lot of interesting, meaty character stuff there.
Yes.
But also can be seen as maybe a bit slow and a bit dry and not much horror. This movie, Sister Hyde, much more kind of horror, over the top, silly, maybe less kind of meaty subtext than I would have liked.
Yes.
I think
it's got lots of jokey things when you've got Burke hanging.
Yeah.
But and then Biker goes Burke by name, Burke by nature.
Right. Exactly.
Then you've got hair thrown into a lime pit, so he's blind.
Yeah.
Then we see him throughout the film as this blind figure who, again, is sort of haunting the streets of Whitechapel.
Yeah, that's
Some
right.
nice little moments in this film.
Yeah, it's true. I like that. There you go. Well, Graham, thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure to have you on to talk about these movies. Final question for you. Do you have a favourite in these kind of this whole subgenre of kind of mad science, man-made monsters?
Well, I'm going to give... Can I give a couple?
Of course.
I would say Dr. X.
Yes.
One of Warner Brothers. They do two forays into horror in the early 30s. Mystery of the Wax Museum and Dr. X, both made in early Technicolor.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great mad
Excellent.
Synthetic flesh.
Yes,
And also a film that was getting a lot of love when you put out this series for schlock value, The Brain That Wouldn't Die.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people wanted that included.
Yes.
I think for sheer fun and bonkersness. The Brain That Wouldn't Die would be up there in and also then a really nasty film from this genre is the 1968 film Corruption with Peter Cushing, which again is a really interesting film.
Excellent.
Very disturbing.
Excellent. Good recommendations. Brilliant. Well, Graham, thank you. If people want to come and find you, find your work, where are you? You're on X, Instagram, all of those?
I'm on Facebook, but most people can contact me via the University of Birmingham, where I'm now in the Department of English. So you can contact me via email. But
Excellent.
I'm
old school.
Yes, I'm old school.
Amazing, Graham. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And there we go. A massive thank you to my brilliant guest, Graham Saunders. I love Graham. Always such a pleasure to have him on the podcast. So get in touch. Let me know what you thought of this week's episode and what you think of this week's films. 2 Hammer horror bangers, The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. Get in touch. You can email me, evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can also find Evolution of Horror on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me, Mike Muncer, on Instagram and on Blue Sky. If you want to get treated to weekly bonus episodes, sign up to our Patreon, patreon.com/evolutionofhorror. And if you want to discuss this week's episode with fellow listeners, you can join the Evolution of Horror discussion group, and that can be found on Facebook. You can find this podcast in all the usual podcast places, and if you get a spare minute, I'd always be grateful if you could drop me a rating and a review or a comment on your podcast app of choice. That always really helps us get discovered by new listeners. This podcast is part of the Evolution of Horror Network. We have several other podcasts that you can listen to right now. Hammer Time, a Hammer horror podcast with Becky Dark and Kevin Lyons. Carry On Up the podcast with me and Susan Kalman. And you can listen to every single episode of The Detective and the Log Lady, in which Stacey Ponder and I discussed every episode of Twin Peaks. So on to next week then. And speaking of carry-ons, this movie actually did get mentioned a couple of times by Graham and I throughout our chat. Next week it's going to be a crossover of sorts, because I am joined by my carry-on co-host Susan Kalman, and we are going to be discussing one of the best man-made monsters movies of the 1960s, Carry On Screaming from 1966. Join us next week for all of this and more on the Evolution of Horror.